All right, guys, we back. Another video, Marv's room. Let's jump straight into it. I wanted to piggyback this video off of the video that I previously made explaining to you guys. So I highly recommend you guys go watch the first video explaining to you guys about Emile Coue and his method of auto-suggestion and how he goes about trying to change things such as, basically manifesting, changing things such as fears. If you have a fear and anxiety around something, phobias, but also too, I think his method is the way that you would go about doing anything if you wanted to manifest anything in your life as well. And I wanted to kind of break down his method and what I recommend and how I think that he would how I interpret how I think that he would want you to go about manifesting a specific person, and kind of compare his way to Neville's way, because I think a very big similarity between his way and Neville's way is the drowsy state part. As Neville calls it, the state akin to sleep. I think that's where there's a lot of similarities between the way Emile Coue tells you to do things and the way Neville tells you to do things, because that drowsy state is such a key part into making it easy on the subconscious mind to be able to pick up and to change a habit or to change a bad thought pattern, to change a behavior like fear, anxiety, phobias, etc. Because when you're not in that drowsy state, and I basically think that's Emile Coue's whole method and mindset is, and this is where I think him and Neville part ways, kind of, because in Emile Coue's mind, Emile Coue believes that autosuggestion, or living in the end, whatever you want to call it, is more powerful when your brain is not actively functioning and working. Because I believe if Emile Coue was trying to manifest a specific person, he would not be going around all throughout the day saying things like, my SP loves me, my SP constantly thinks about me, my SP misses me, my SP adores me, my SP always texts me, he's texting me right now, I am so loved, I am so adored. I like any of these types of affirmations. I don't believe Emile Coue would go, and I know, and again, as you guys that have been following me for a long time, I always say there's no one size fits all. So what I just said, that method, that way of doing affirmations all throughout the day, it can 100% work for some people. But again, like Emile Coue says, if there's no if there's no antagonizing going on between your will and your imagination, then you will probably be okay. But if you have a lot of resistance, if you don't want to use the word antagonistic, if you have a lot of resistance, then it's going to be very difficult for you to affirm and to receive what you want that way. So like I was saying, I think the way Emile Coue would go about manifesting a specific person is he would not go throughout the day saying all of those affirmations, whether it's even self-love affirmations, self-concept affirmations. I don't believe he would go throughout the day just constantly repeating all of these uplifting affirmations about himself to try to get his self-concept up. I don't believe he would do any of that. I believe he would only do his affirmations or his auto-suggestion, because affirmations are based and auto-suggestion are the same thing, just different words. But I believe he would do his auto-suggestion method when he knew his subconscious mind was going to be fertile, when he knew his subconscious mind was in a place to receive what he's saying. So I believe he would do his visualizations or his auto-suggestions at night before bed, as Neville calls it, state akin to sleep, or in the morning, first thing when he were to wake up before he started his day. I believe those two moments would be golden for him to do any type of visualization or affirmation. And me personally, I honestly would recommend that as well, because even me, I was never a person, and I've never been that person. Even now, when I personally do my, auto suggestion, affirmations or visualizations, I'm not the person that where I go throughout my entire day, and whatever it may be, whether it's self-concept, whether at the time when it was on SP stuff, I was never that person that went throughout the day and did thousands of affirmations, hundreds, thousands of affirmations, or whatever the number may be, hundreds of affirmations, dozens of affirmations. Like, that was never me. I basically kind of did it the way that I believe he would do it, in the way that he talks about doing it, is I would always basically do these things at night and in the morning when my conscious mind wasn't very active and my subconscious mind could receive whatever auto suggestion or affirmations or programming that I was trying to give it. And I think this is a huge reason why a lot of you guys suffer with your imaginal scenes, that when you're trying to do Neville's method, you're struggling with your imaginal scene, you're struggling with your living in the end scene with your SP, you're struggling with your specific person affirmations because of the exact reason that Emile Coue talks about when he says the will must not be brought into play when practicing auto-suggestion. So a lot of you guys are bringing your SP affirmations. You're trying to will your SP affirmations by saying things like, oh, my SP loves me, my SP adores me, my SP hates me. Meanwhile, you literally just got in the biggest fight. You literally just got in the biggest whatever with your specific person, or you haven't talked to them in a year, haven't talked to them in 2 years, 5 years, whatever the case may be. Yet you're still trying to will all of these words that you don't believe over the situation. And as I talked about in the first video, your imagination will always triumph your will. And that's what Emile Coue believes. Your imagination will always triumph your will. So no matter how many words of affirmation you're speaking about your specific person, no matter how much you say, oh, they love me, they're obsessed with me, they're da 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 da. If Emile Coue believes your imagination is way more powerful. What's up here is way more powerful than what's coming out of here. You know what I mean? Because up here is what you believe. Out here is what you want to believe, what you want to happen, but you don't believe that yet. And when you're not in a drowsy state, when you're not in a subjective state to where you can receive it, it's going against the grain. The exact opposite is most likely going to happen. And that's also what he says. If you speak about something you don't really believe in and you keep trying to force it and will it, bad things can happen. Which also kind of goes hand in hand with Florence Scovel Shinn and her book, In the Game of Life, How to Play It, when she says, she believes in saying under grace in a perfect way when she says her affirmations, because she wants to make it clear with the intention to the universe that I want this to happen in a way that's beneficial for all parties. I don't want to get my manifestation, and then I don't want to get it in a way to where when I get it, something bad happens to me, or something bad happens to someone I love, etc., etc. So with these SP affirmations and imaginal scenes, I think a big roadblock for you guys is you guys are trying to imagine, you're trying to use your will and force imaginal scenes. You're trying to will imaginal scenes such as getting married with your SP leaving a marriage, your SP breaking up with somebody and getting back. You're trying to create these scenes in your head with your will, but there's an antagonism going on. You can feel it, and your imagination is not in alignment with it, so it's not bringing it to pass. You know what I mean? And so I think this is a big piece of what Emile Coue is talking about when he says that it won't be. You know what I mean? When the conflict between the will and the imagination will always win. However, he also states that the imagination can be directed, which means you can direct your imagination, but you must direct it the right way. And I think the right way to direct your imagination in his way would be before bed and when you first wake up in the morning. And also don't do it a million times throughout the day, which Neville talks about, living in the assumption. So I think a lot of you guys may think, 24/7, I have to be in that assumption. If I'm not in that assumption, something's bad's going to happen, and you start to live with that fear and anxiety. But I don't think that is the case at all. And I think also too, what will help you guys is if you do it the way Emile Coue saying, auto-suggestion, which is also your living in the end scene. When you do it at night, I believe you should be, if you do think you want to force your will, you should use it in a way to that your imagination can believe it. Make your will and whatever your auto suggestion is, or you're living in the end scene, Make that match each other, okay? So what do I mean by that? This is what I mean. In your mind, you have an image of you and your specific person breaking up, getting into the biggest fight, the biggest argument that you've ever gotten into in your life, whatever the case may be, whatever bad thing happened, however it ended. You have that in your mind. However, you're trying to create an imaginal scene where you're doing auto suggestion, saying things like, my SP loves me, my SP, I can't believe me and my SP are married. You know what I mean? You willing that is like Emile Coue says, most likely that's not going to happen, and the exact opposite is going to be brought to that, which means more pain and suffering is going to come on your end, which means you'll probably end up pushing your specific person away further, because the exact opposite scene that you're trying to create, because you're trying to force it with your will, that scene is going to come about. So you don't want to do that. So instead of creating a scene of, you know, oh, my SP is we're madly in love and we're married, you know, instead of creating a scene like that, create a scene, in my opinion, what Emile Coue would say would be, before sleep or when you first wake up in the morning, create an auto suggestion or create a scene that is 100% more believable. Create a scene of you and your SP holding hands. Don't necessarily have to go all the way to marriage, or don't necessarily have to go all the way to you and your SP having children, something like that. Because again, your will and your imagination aren't married yet. And when your will and imagination, based on what he's saying, when they're not married, your imaginal scene or your auto suggestion affirmations are futile. It's pointless. Don't do it. You know, so I think in order to combat that, I think going along with not doing it and killing yourself throughout the day of imaginal scenes, you're trying to stay in the state, trying to stay in the assumption, you know what I mean? I think what he's also saying, what he would say and what I would say, and what I also tell people when I work with people one-on-one, which I tend to see a lot of people get great results, and I got great results and fast results with this, is I created scenes to where my will and my imagination can be on the same page. That's what helped me get what that's what helps me tend to get what I want faster, is when my will, whatever I'm trying to will, when I make that in my imagination on the same page, when I marry both of those, when my will is not stronger than my imagination, but on the same page with my imagination. Because a lot of us, our wills, we're trying to will something that is not in alignment with what we have going on up here, or with what we feel within our heart. And as you guys know, our heart is 5,000 up to 5,000 times more magnetic than our brains are, you know, so we really create with our heart, with our feelings and emotions. That's what really allows stuff to happen quick. You know what I mean? But again, in order for that to happen, your imagination and your mind, your words have to be on the same accord for it to happen, you know, relatively quickly. And I found, like I said, personally, when my whatever I want, even if it is somewhat willed, I find that when it's in alignment with my imagination, things can happen a lot sooner, a lot faster. And in order for that to happen, that means my imaginal scene, if you ultimately want to get to marriage, or you ultimately want to get the children, or to get your person back, whatever the case may be, you have to understand that, okay, maybe so that my will can get out of the way, maybe I need to let go of my ego. Maybe I need to make my scene smaller. Maybe I need to create a different imaginal scene. Maybe I need to say different affirmations to where my imagination can believe it and my scene can happen naturally. Because that's another issue too. And I think this is why a lot of you guys have trouble coming up with scenes, is because your will has a certain scene that it sees, but your imagination also has another scene that it's seen. And your imagination has scenes that it has history. It actually has recorded history that you remember. So it's believing that more. But your will is saying, no, I want this scene to happen. You know what I mean? So it's like, how do you find that common balance? And to me, you find that common balance by picking something that's believable. Picking something that you know that can happen with you and your SP very quickly within the next 30 days. You know, if you know for a fact, like having a baby, you know you're not going to have a baby within the next 30 days. It takes 9 months to conceive a baby. So you know that's not going to happen, right? So instead of going straight to that, to where your will is going to be fighting with your imagination the entire time, go to a scene where imagine a scene, create a scene that you could see, imagining that you can imagine happen within the next 7 days, within the next 2 weeks, within the next 3 weeks, within the next 30 days. You know what I mean? And I think that can suffice. That's more than enough to suffice a lot of us with our desires that we want. You know what I mean? But I think, like I said, the trouble that a lot of you guys are having is you're creating these scenes that you don't believe. And so your will and your imagination are fighting each other because it's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. I don't believe that. I don't accept that. You know what I mean? But even if your imagination doesn't accept it, I think it can accept it if it's more believable. The fact that even if you will something, but it's more believable, I believe your will can still have an effect on your imagination. You know what I mean? It's just a matter of if you believe that. And you got to create more realistic scenes and instead of creating scenes that are difficult to think of. And I think that's like I said, a big wall that most people run into is they create these scenes that they don't believe, or they have a hard time because their will and their imagination is fighting back and forth. So to recap, like I said, I think how Emile Coue would go about manifesting an SP, I don't think he would affirm when he's not in the state. I don't think he would affirm when he's like all throughout the day, certain things and different things. I don't think he would go about it. I think Emile Coue would be very efficient with how he does it. And I think this is what Joe Dispenza did. Joe Dispenza, excuse me, I think Joe Dispenza kind of did it the way Emile Coue saying, meaning Joe Dispenza, I don't think was going hours and hours and hours and hours all throughout the day trying to stay in the state. Joe Dispenza stayed in the state in those two golden hours. I like to call them golden hours. When you first wake up and when you're about to go to sleep, those golden hours is when Joe Dispenza does his work, does his meditations, because that's more of an efficient way to save your time and to not stress yourself out. If you know, okay, when I'm about to go to sleep, that last hour is the most important time. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to do whatever I do. And when I first wake up, I'm going to do the same thing. That saves your time, and that saves you the fear and anxiety of thinking, oh, I have to affirm throughout the entire day. I have to stay in the state the entire day, because you don't have to stay in the state the entire day to manifest. You don't have to stay in the state a long ass time in order to get your affirmations. You don't have to say your affirmations 10,000 times, 100,000 times, 50,000 times in a day to manifest what you want. You don't have to. And that takes away a lot of pressure and anxiety. And that's the way I adapted it. That's the way I've done it. That's the way I've gotten a lot of results. And I think Emile Coue would agree with me, you know? So let me know what you guys thoughts are below for this video. You know, do you like Neville? Would you like Neville's way more? If you've read the book, would you agree with Neville's way more? Or would you agree with Emile Coue's method more? I mean, it's all up for discussion. I love to hear what you guys think. But as always, I will see you guys. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys next time. You know where, you know when.